Hello Apple Tarts, it's me. I've just taken a quick break from doing a tremendous amount of work today to offer you some words of love and support and just talk about a few things that I've been thinking about that relate directly to my life as well, with regard to getting clear about what you want and where you want to go, and getting unstuck when you feel stuck, because I've just recently devised a tarot reading for this. I've not listed it as an option on the shop or anything yet, but it's something that I've been thinking about. I've been considering the different things that we might need to contemplate or reflect on when we feel like we're stuck in a rut somehow, when we're stuck in our current situation and we can't really seem to fly free. I was thinking about how it's very important to reach out and connect with your higher powers and your signature strengths during a time like this. So it's really important to know your different techniques and your different power habits, if you like, your ways of actually pulling yourself out of that feeling of being stuck. And it's so important to analyse when you feel stuck and when you feel like you can't move forward. It's so important to analyse the ways in which you feel like you're obligated. When you look at your life and you look at the different aspects of your life, whereabouts do you feel obligated? Or whereabouts do you feel like you really don't have a choice? And whereabouts do you feel like you are tolerating something? Like it's not really what you want and you would like to make changes, but you don't feel you can, so you're just tolerating the status quo. And where do you feel like your boundaries are being breached? Because that's a big way that people can feel stuck, where they feel like they're constantly having their boundaries and their limitations breached, but they just can't come forth with their authentic voice, with their personal truth, either because they're afraid of hurting others or because they think they don't have a right to kind of lay the law down and strengthen their boundaries and talk about where their boundaries are. There are certain situations, certain sets of circumstances in life that can get quite sticky and complex, where you feel like you really don't have a right to voice what you want or to voice what you feel is too much. And whereabouts in your life do you feel like you're really going through the motions? Where do you feel like day after day it's the same schedule or the same routine and you're finding that you really don't feel that you can break out of it? And this brings me on to another point actually that I was thinking about today. I was talking with a client earlier today about the comfort zone and about the reliability that we sometimes, the reliability that we feel that routines and schedules afford us sometimes. We feel more stable and we feel more safe and protected when we have certain routines in place, when we have certain things that we know are going to be the case, or certain things that we carry out on a day-to-day basis, either emotional techniques that we have in place or routines that we do in our everyday lives, and we feel like they serve us and they protect us and they keep our mind organised and they keep our life organised. But when we're actually afraid to break free and we're afraid to kind of fly and launch into something, we can use comfort zones as a kind of barrier. And when you're trying to maintain a status quo that's no longer working for you, when you're really trying to pretend that everything is okay, when in reality it's anything but okay, then the comfort zone itself is a massive energy drain, because you're constantly trying to reassure yourself that it's the right thing for you and that it's what you want. And at the same time, you're trying to maintain it in the outer world and you're trying to convince yourself that you can grow and you can launch, but you need to keep these certain safe little routines in place. The reality is that your comfort zone is a massive energy drain, because you're constantly trying to reinforce it and you're constantly trying to convince yourself that it's working for you and that you're happy with it, when deep down you know that your growth itself has certain conditions. I call it conditional growth. Okay, so basically what I mean by that is, if you are trying to grow in your life, if you're trying to progress, if you're trying to make something manifest, or if you're trying to really change who you are, or you're trying to go after what you want and really improve your connection to your personal power, that growth that you're going after cannot be conditional. And for so many people, it's conditional. For so many people, it's like, I'm committed to my personal growth and I'm committed to manifesting what I want in my life, but I'm not prepared to do that if it means analysing my relationship, or I'm not prepared to do that if it means changing my personal habits, or I'm not prepared to do that if it means working out what I might need to change about my employment. So there are all these little conditions that kind of stop you from getting unstuck, because you think you're committed to your personal growth, but the reality is that you're only committed to it if you don't have to do these certain little pockets of work that you find might be uncomfortable, or where you're really holding on to some emotional resistance. So I think one way to come unstuck is to try and ask yourself whether or not your growth is conditional, whether or not you have certain conditions that you won't overstep, that you won't address, Because that's basically like expecting yourself to grow inside a cage. It's like being a big glorious plant and expecting yourself to grow while you're all twisted up inside this little space. You need to break open from that cage. You need to do away with the cage. You need to dismantle it. And the only way to do that is to honestly ask yourself, get really, really clear about this. Ask yourself, is my growth conditional? Am I making a commitment to myself that I'm going to improve and that I'm going to better my life and I'm going to manifest what I want, but there are all these conditions attached to it. There's all this fine print, and I'm not prepared to let go of that because it's scary, because I'll need to let go of my emotional resistance. I'll need to drop some of that resistance and really look at those places where I am stuck. And a lot of the time it's to do with your relationship. A lot of the time it's to do with yourself and your past and your connection to your past, kind of going through the skeletons in your closet, looking at all those little ghosts and demons that keep you back. Sometimes it's to do with negative cycles, either addictions or certain emotional habits that are bad habits that don't serve you. And you've told yourself that, you know, you're committed to your growth and you do want to progress and move forward, but you're not prepared to let go of that habit. You're not prepared to actually address that or explore that, or you're not prepared to let go of this certain relationship, even though you know that the dynamics of the relationship are keeping you really restrained and contained and unable to move forward in the way that you want. And it's only when you've actually looked at those little conditions that you have on your personal growth and actually been honest with yourself that you can kind of feel that you're coming unstuck. And for me, a big part of my lesson so far this year with getting unstuck and getting clear about what I want is, first of all, remembering all the time that every single progression that I want to make and everything that I want to create and everything that I want to put out into the world or change about myself is a process. So I'm always trying to look at those different comparisons that I can make in terms of other processes that exist. So for example, if I look at the process that an apple has to go through, from the seed stage right up to the bearing of fruit and then the ripening of the fruit and then the falling from the tree, etc. That is a process, right? That doesn't happen overnight. Same with birth, any birth cycle. The same with that ever so popular one we use about the butterfly and the chrysalis. You know, these things take time. So it's really about small daily actions. It's really about the small things that you can do to make improvements. I think if you take a look at the ways in which you want to get clear and go forward, and you're thinking about it on this great big timeline from where you are now to the finish point, of course it's going to feel overwhelming. And of course you're going to feel severely challenged because it looks like such a massive period of time and a massive mammoth amount of work to do before you reach the place that you want to get to, before you reach your destination. So it's really important to break things down into manageable chunks and to think of things as a process and to think of every single setback and every single triumph and every single small daily accomplishment that you have as a part of that overall process of growing and strengthening and ripening and learning. It just means that when you actually reach the finish line, you're going to be so much more nurtured and enriched and empowered as a person because you've been through all of those little challenges and you've built on something day by day by day. So there's no overnight success about it, and it's almost like you have to accept that before you can get unstuck and get truly focused. And something else that I've really thought about is how often we compare our progress to the progress of somebody else, or how often we look at what we want and then we see what somebody else has. This is a big theme that's coming up for me and for loads of people that I know at the moment. It seems like there's a real synchronistic thing happening around this subject where we compare our progress, or we take a look at all the obstacles and all the challenges that are in our way and we see how somebody else doesn't have those same obstacles or those same challenges. It seems like they're really flying through it, breezing through it, either because they have the money to facilitate what they want, or they have the time to facilitate what they want, or they don't have as many challenges as you in terms of family or in terms of location, in terms of the emotional turmoil they're going through, anything like that. It's really, really tempting to project your concerns and your anxieties outwards and spend less time thinking about yourself and what you have to accomplish and more time thinking about somebody else and where they are on the pathway, and either feeling jealous and competitive or feeling insecure and depressed or feeling like you're not as good as that person. But there's two things that it's really important to remember here. The first one is that everybody has their different challenges. Everybody has their challenges when they're really trying to manifest something. Nothing comes entirely easy. And when you look at somebody from the outside and you take a look at what their life looks like from the outside and what their journey of progress looks like, it's never what it is to them. You know, we're always on the outside looking in. They are on the inside looking out, and for them, their position in terms of what they feel about their journey and what they feel about what they need to achieve is completely different. So it might look like they're breezing through it, but in reality they have their own challenges, they have their own cross to bear. So I think it's important to remember that, you know, even though we feel sometimes like we're on the losing end and other people have so much more or so many more opportunities, it's important to remember that we're all filtering everything through our own consciousness. And the way something looks to you is not really the way it is in reality. And the other thing to remember is to reframe your emotional response to your obstacle. Like for me, I see my obstacles and I see my challenges and I see how far I've got to go with something, and I think, God, you know, I really feel like somebody else has the edge or the advantage, and it's kind of, you know, it's making me feel really like, almost like I'm justified in the struggle that I'm going through because I don't have, you know, this great advantage that somebody else might have. And then I always think to myself, I'm not challenged. I'm not necessarily dealing with obstacles. You know, what I'm dealing with are opportunities to strengthen myself. All of these things that are kind of getting in my way, all of these roadblocks that I really wish weren't there, that I feel like I really need to break out of, all of those things are gifts to me. They're opportunities for me to show myself and show others what I can do, and to strengthen and to learn and to really feel invigorated by the lessons that I'm being offered. I'm being given them on a plate, and I'm kind of, you know, going into victimhood mode sometimes, and then I always pull myself out by thinking, no, this is a challenge to me. It's not an obstacle. It's a challenge that I'm now going to push myself to overcome. I think when you look at the questions that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, like where am I stuck in a rut, where do I feel like I'm going through the motions, where do I feel like I have no choice, when you really start asking yourself these questions and you start writing things down and you really start getting clear about where you feel stuck in your life, you recognise that the things that you can put into place to start changing stuff, they're not big overwhelming things, and the change isn't going to come overnight, but they are small daily steps, they're small action plans that you can put into place over time. And every time you get from one step of the action plan to the next, you need to give yourself credit, and you need to give yourself words of love. You need to honour your journey and really think to yourself, I've done well, you know, I've ticked off another box. And every day you get to tick a box, even if it's only something that you feel might be quite minor in the scheme of things. Overall, it's really important to your progress, and you just need to keep thinking about stuff like the birth cycle, the cycle from the caterpillar to the butterfly, the cycle of an apple, and the way that it's so complex and not momentary. It's gestation, it's waiting, it's patience. And also think about the value of standstill. You know, when you feel stuck and you really feel like you can't push on and you can't progress, that is a very, very difficult feeling. But not every single stage in our life is supposed to be about action and being proactive and pushing forward. Of course, there are always stages for standstill, and those stages are for reflection, and they are for relaxation, and they are for going back to the drawing board. They're for those times where you work out, is my goal still my goal? Do I still feel the same way that I did 6 months ago? Let me check in with myself. Let me have that dialogue with myself. I think a lot of the time I think about the Hanged Man card in tarot. And when the Hangman card comes up for my clients, it's often a message with regard to how they feel when they're stuck and they can't push forward. They feel like there's that pane of glass and they just can't put their fist through it. There's something holding them back. They feel repressed. They feel like it's not quite going their way. But the beauty of the lesson in the Hanged Man is that that's the perfect time to stop and reflect, to try therapeutic journaling, to do your shadow work, to be still with yourself. I really think that the Hanged Man has a lot to do with honouring your connection to yourself and realising that when there's less action and less manifestation, there's more of this time where you can check in and you can really honour yourself and bond with yourself and think about how you're feeling. Work out how you're feeling and decide how you're feeling about stuff, because I think that it's important to check in and recognise where changes or tweaks might need to take place. So I think about these things as ways to come unstuck and get clear. And really I also think about a lot of the time the advice that we're given from other people when we're really trying to push forward and we're really trying to break through that glass ceiling of our own progression. We do turn to other people for advice and for guidance, and I think that's a great thing. I think other people have a lot of stuff to bring to the table, and I think it's great that we can trust people and have that feeling of the sanctity of getting advice and counsel from somebody else. But I also think that when we're visibly struggling or when we're visibly trying to push into the next phase, a lot of unsolicited advice comes our way too. Yeah, a lot of advice that we didn't really ask for. A lot of advice that comes from a place of love potentially, but doesn't really take into account all of the circumstances, maybe because not all of the circumstances are clear, or because you haven't been completely transparent about all of the circumstances, which is totally your right. You know, you have a right not to be transparent if you don't want to be. And a lot of people think that the advice that they're putting forward is really helpful, or they think that their pushing and their insistence is actually encouragement, you know. They might feel like they're spurring you to action, but you might feel pressured and attacked and, you know, as almost as if they're frustrated with you for not doing what they want you to do, when in reality you're really trying to craft out your own road and craft out your own pathway, and it feels like others might be kind of pushing their point of view onto you without knowing all of the facts. And I think the important thing about unsolicited advice is that it is a offering to you in terms of testing your resolve. If somebody's point of view is that you should be going a different way to the way you're going, or that you should be pursuing a different career to the one you're pursuing, or you should be going about your relationship issue in a different way, but you feel that, you know, you've genuinely checked in with your intuition and you really feel this is the way that you need to go and this is what you need to be doing at this time, then unsolicited advice kind of tests your resolve, and it gives you an opportunity to put forward with grace and diplomacy your opinion on something, and to reassure the people around you that you feel that you know what you're doing, and you feel that your resolve is strong, and you feel confident with your plan. You feel okay going forward with your plan of action. Because a lot of the time we do get into tiffs and conflicts and disagreements because advice that comes forward at a time when it's not convenient, or at a time when it might seem insensitive or pressurising, it does lead us to get into these disagreements and these times where we feel awkward or we feel like there's tension. But in reality, it actually gives you an opportunity to put forward from your own perspective your resolve and your sense of certainty and your sense of confidence and your sense of willingness to take a risk, or your willingness to kind of push yourself outside of those boundaries. And sometimes the people in our lives who are trying to encourage us and trying to maybe give us words of caution, kind of cautionary warnings and stuff like that, they're worried about us, you know, maybe they want to see us succeed, they don't want to see us fail, they don't want to see us waste our potential. Sometimes they just need to hear from you that you feel okay with your choice, that you feel calm and you feel confident and you feel okay with the fact that failure is definitely part of what may be ahead, but you feel like even if you do have setbacks, you're going to see them as challenges, you're going to see them as worthy opportunities to reflect and learn. And when you come forward and you actually say those things, a lot of the worry in the people around you kind of fades away. Or a lot of people that are very cocksure and feel like, yeah, I can tell you what to do, I've been here before. When you express to them that you're going your own way and that you feel comfortable with that premise and you feel comfortable in yourself and you're in touch with your intuition, they will back off and they will realise that you are a lot more in alignment with your personal power than they recognised. But, you know, I do feel, of course, that advice and counsel and guidance is all good stuff, and I feel like we can take a lot of it and use it to strengthen us. But sometimes when we feel pressured, or when we feel like somebody's not really getting what we're trying to do, it's always an opportunity to voice our authenticity, our authentic desire and our personal truth, to sit down with somebody and say, this is the pathway that I'm on, and I can tell you now that I'm completely comfortable with it. I feel like it's correct for me at this time. So that's another way that you can get clear, is by kind of voicing that with others and having that dialogue with other people. So if you feel like you're in a rut, if you feel stuck, you know, check in with your signature strengths, have a look at what you've done before, the tried and tested methods that you know have helped you to kind of let go and launch. And just take a look at where you are in a rut and where you do feel like you're going through the motions, or where you do feel like there's no choice. Those aspects of your life where you feel that there's no choice, or where you feel constantly obligated, there are things that you can do to reframe your emotional responses to those challenges that you're going through. See them as challenges and not as obstacles. And there's also things that you can do to ensure that you can release yourself from bondage that is not serving you. But it's normally small steps. Do not pressurise yourself to change everything overnight. That's very rarely the way it works. Always think about the birth cycle, and always think about the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis. You know, the longest and hardest job is the job that you haven't started yet. If you begin now, then it's going to be less of a chore tomorrow and less of a job the day after, and so on, until you recognise the tangible changes that are taking place. just some thoughts I'm having, really. You know, I think that it's a time at the moment for me and for the people in my life where a lot of people do feel stuck. A lot of people feel like they're on the carousel and they can't get off. But that hanged man vibe, I feel, always comes through for me, that opportunity that we have when there is standstill, to take a look at what's in your control right now, what you can proactively do right now to start changing any situation where you feel stuck. If you know there's something that you can do, some small action that you can put into place, do that. And if you look at everything that you've done that's within your control that you can possibly do, and you've done it, relax about the other stuff, you know, take your foot off the gas. There are some things that are not within your control. There are some times in your life where it is just about gestation and waiting and reflection and necessary standstill. It's not all go, go, go. We can't be proactive 100% of the time. Sometimes we need to let life roll out. We need to let the carpet of fate do its thing as it rolls out and we see where it's going and what it's going to look like. And during those times, don't feel like you're not pushing ahead. Don't berate yourself for not doing anything. Do inner work, you know. If you're at the end of all of the outer work that you can do, if you've taken actions and made steps and made paces towards what you want in the outer world, and that segment of the work is done, you feel like frustrated and restrained because things aren't happening, use this time to go within and work on yourself. Do the shadow work that you need to do the healing work that you need to do. Check in with yourself, with your goals, with your desires. Make sure that everything feels okay with you. Use your intuition. Find out where those little dark parts are that really need your attention right now, and do that work, because that is just as important to your journey as anything that you could do in the outer realm. Much love, people. Blessed be.